reading is requires a lot of discipline, structure of discipline, and to be to create that resilience. Even in life, we're gonna have to read books that are informational that might not seem so stimulating to us, but it's just like you said, building that resilience. I'll pass it to Autumn.
I know there are a lot of stigmas around boys reading, right? A lot of boys are like, I don't want to read. Who's going to read a book? And it kind of like favors that reading is more feminine. But I'm curious, like in your studies, if you found that is it more like towards a gender that a specific gender is struggling to read, or it's across the board?
It's across the board. But yeah, trying to get males to read is a challenge. And and let me say this also, that the problems that we're seeing in the United States regarding reading is not geared toward black and brown, right? Everyone is experiencing difficulties reading. The difference is those that have the resources to get their children interventions and some other forms of and some other resources to help mitigate the problem. They're going to go ahead and get those resources. Part of the problem is that if we're sitting here and we have our children experiencing difficulties and we go and we get tutoring and we get other resources, we're thinking that it's just our children. Okay, we go, we get some remediation and it's okay. Not understanding that it's not just the four of us, but it's 40 times 40.
Mm.
And so we don't really know that there's a problem because everybody's getting their own help. So it's happening across the board. But as far as boys are concerned, we pigeonhole them. We make them read what we want them to read. Boys and girls are different. Their brains are a little different. They develop differently. And so, whereas boys like to move their bodies, right? They like different things. They like to read different things than girls. Why not give it to them? They're still reading. The goal is to read, not read what you want me to read. We can get into that too, but we got to get them to read first. And so we have to build their capacity, their stamina. So if they need to walk around a little bit, let them walk around. If they need to stand up and read, let them stand up and read. Movement is not a dirty word. It's just how they're accessing the information in the book. If we take that away from them, then we deny them their access toward the content that's in that book. So they need to move. I know people say there's not, such thing as, learning preferences, but there are. And our boys, they like, to move their bodies. So I remember our youngest son. Um, I'm like, "Oh, he's not reading. Like, I need him to be able to read. He's an African American male. He needs to read and write." And so he would play with his toys in the corner, and I would just read out loud. And one day I skipped a couple of pages, and he's like, "No, no, no, that's not what happened. What happened?" So now I know he's listening, but he's just off in his corner. He's not sitting with me, which is okay. It's okay. He was off doing his thing, but I was still able to read to him. I was still able to get it in. And he was listening. He was just listening differently. And if we respect that, then our boys will be okay.
I like how you build that relationship too, because I do think there's an importance about building the relationship to form the reader. And I was curious about, like, it's true, we definitely have to find outside mentorship to help our children develop into avid readers. Um, our programs that are designed to create readers in school have their responsibility as much as the parent. Where do you think those opportunities exist on both sides so they can better cooperate?
Mhm. Wow. Yes. So, like, I'm really passionate about that because one of the things that I think we're missing as far as the developmental continuum reading is we think that reading occurs just in school when you get to kindergarten. And people don't understand that reading is not just about letter names and sounds and putting those things together. Oh, wow, you can read. But it's about building background knowledge, right? It's about getting experiences and opportunities to build language. So where does the village come in? That's the part that the village plays. Taking children to the zoo, to the museum, to the park, out for a walk, talking about the trees and the cars and the houses and to being descriptive in what you're saying and how you're saying it. It just exposing them to so much. Even to people, I talk about the church and I talk about during Easter Sunday, or when people get ready to do those recitations, and that's building oral language. What happened to those days? Seeing people around you that really care. Now, they might be strict on you, but you know that they care. And so when you're watching Mr. So and so in the church and he's modeling those attributes and characteristics that you find, that you want to emulate when you get older, that's building a foundation. That's encouragement. That's where the village comes in. So now, Mr. Blanton, we're going fishing. We're going to take you fishing. We're going to talk everything about fishing. I've never been fishing, but now this is an opportunity to build language and give me more vocabulary words that I've never been exposed to. And so the village, we need programming. We need churches to open up, except, just not on Sunday. We need them to open up 7 days a week. We need them to form relationships with the school districts so that they understand what children need and maybe host literacy nights for families to say, what can you do to build my child's phonological awareness? What can I do to build their phonics skills? What can I do to build reading comprehension? Right? What can I do? And then have programs where students get together, all levels, and talk about a book that they've read. Talk about, it doesn't have to be a book, it can be current events. We want to get the language and the oral language development. We want to get them to speak and to talk and nurture that in a safe space where they can grow. So that can happen outside of school. We can't take them to, all these trips that I'm talking. We can't. We don't have the capacity. We don't have the money. We don't have the funds to do that. But the community can. Do we have programming for students under third grade and under, third grade to sixth grade and sixth grade and beyond? Do we have programming in our libraries? Do we have programs in our community that will foster reading development? Are are we in a position to say in the state of New Jersey that literacy is important and it's a priority? So if we say that that's a priority, then I should see things that will help children develop these skills. And do we see that enough? No. I don't think that it was so much of a change. We've always had a reading problem. There's always been a reading problem, right? COVID did not unveil this great big reading problem. COVID unveiled the access and accessibility, right? That woke us up. Well, we've always had a problem in this country with reading, going back to anti-literacy laws. So I just want to preface what I'm about to say with the fact that our brains were not wired to read. We have to teach it to read, right? It does this great thing, right? It rewires itself, right, to form pathways for reading to develop. A lot of people don't understand that. It's very different than language. Language, you can put a child in a room full of people who are speaking and they will speak. You don't have to teach them how to talk, right? That is not going to happen for reading. You cannot sit someone in a room full of people who are reading, whether they're reading out loud or silently. It's not going to happen. You have to teach it to read, right? That starts very early. What we think is reading starts in kindergarten, and then we build these habits in kindergarten. And if we think that, we're 5 years already behind, right? Reading starts really at the moment of conception. How? Well, all of the stuff that mom eats, all of the environmental pressures and stress impacts the developing brain. Reading is all about the brain. The brain is the main character, right? And so if we understand that, then we have a point of reference. And so how do we build stamina, right? Because in order to learn to read and read well, you have to build stamina. I'm like, this is a race, right? Not for the quick athlete, but it's endurance. And it took us years, decades to get here. My book has only been out since August. It's not going to take months for us to get out. And so people have to come to the point where I came to and say, okay, I reflected. Now I see, and now I'm going to do better. When you know better, you do better.